Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Beat Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We're recording live from Health in Las Vegas, and today I've got the privilege of being with two leaders of healthcare and technology that are making a difference in the space. I want to introduce you to Harpaul Sambhi. He's the CEO and founder of Magical. And I also want to introduce you to Doug Hires, who is a healthcare executive and advisor to Magical. Welcome to the podcast, gents.
Thank you
for having us.
Thanks, Saul.
Yeah. Hey, look, it has been a meeting. We're here at the last day. Admire the stamina that you guys have. How's the meeting going?
Oh, it's been fantastic. We've engaged with a ton of people, and the energy on the floor, I think, has just been almost infectious. It's really been exciting to see people connecting, talking about the future and the possibilities. Really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about for you, Harpaul?
I just see the world of possibility with agentic AI specifically, and AI as a whole, whether it's a chatbot interface where it can help with reporting, where traditionally healthcare executives have had lackluster reporting, so to speak, that's custom to themselves, or agentic AI that allows organizations to do a lot more and get into those systems that just haven't been working with and have been missing interoperability. That's been a huge unlock for them. And they're not only tire kicking, but they're also now doing the first base, which is trying to apply it internally, which is a really good sign.
That's great. Yeah, the energy, and then that first base. Like it's quite. I think back to a year ago, I was still conversations, people starting to do things, but definitely seeing people out on the field, and that first base idea that you just shared. So, Harpaul, why don't we start with you? Talk to us about Magical.
Yeah, Magical is a autonomous agentic platform. So think of it as Palantir, but for self-serve. Organizations today have hundreds of processes that they continually change. And today, when you think of AI, it's still in its infancy, so to speak. It needs a lot of hand-holding. And as a result of the hand-holding, it's still different than ChatGPT, where we can just ask it a question and it can analyze something in a microsecond and analyze 200 pages. When we think about actually doing work and going end to end, it still needs a lot of prescription and guidance, so to speak, and hand-holding, much like a new intern or a new employee, so to speak. So what we have seen as a result is vendors traditionally taking the approach where they have to have forward deployed engineers on staff and go end to end in that model. And Magical's taking a different approach where we're saying, okay, why not build a platform that can abstract all the challenges and nuances that the engineers typically build, and then arm it to non-technical users, which is the vision. So we have healthcare providers and payers, health tech companies that have leveraged us, multi-specialty, some of the largest ortho organizations, some of the largest payers out there that are starting to leverage our products and actually getting into production versus doing the pet project on the side that a lot of organizations and a lot of people are trying to do, but they fail to materialize that into a larger scale aspect.
Now, thank you so much for that level set. And let's talk about agentic AI. What makes agentic AI different from other automation tech we've seen in the past, like robotic process automation?
Yeah, I like to give it an analogy because when we start to throw out three-letter acronyms, it becomes very difficult to actually understand. My analogy often comes back to 15, 20 years ago. We used to use a formidable product called MapQuest. MapQuest was a product where, for me at least, created a lot of heartache, where my parents would complain and argue the most in the car. And it's when my dad would make that wrong turn and my mom would just go at it, right? That is similar and analogous to robotic processing automation, where you're prescribing and you're on that journey, but you make that wrong turn, something breaks, or you make that right turn, but then there's construction and now you're stuck. So whether the process changes or the sites change, bots become exceptionally brittle. And you can then put it at another analogy when we were gifted with map technology vis-a-vis Google or Apple, where you can put in your end destination. That's similar to like Gen AI with GPS in a way. But now in the last couple of years, we've seen autonomous vehicles come into play. I think of Waymo, where we're taking the person out of the driver's seat. And that's very similar to the kind of like the agentic side, where you're building an autonomous solution to go end to end on a workflow or process, typically what humans might be doing 60, 70% of the time, and just taking the human out of the equation. So that's how I think about RPA, Gen AI, Agentic AI, similar to MapQuest, Google Maps, and now Waymo, that's allowing us to do other things in the background. But still taking care of it. We're still seeing the Waymo get to our end destination. And if something's wrong, you can press the button and talk to them a little bit. But we have that assurity and that comfort and assurance that we're going to get to our end destination. It's going to be a smooth ride. And there's no random channel or radio that's being played or interruptions that's happening. It's really smooth and it's expected.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And actually, I was in Phoenix for a conference and I was in a Waymo. And it ended up driving into an alley and these guys were unloading stuff. And so the car stops and it just stops and they're looking at us. They're like, and we're like, we can't move the car, man. Like there's no driver. So we hit the button and called right away. And they're like, oh, yes, sir. The attendant from Waymo is like, the car is recalibrating. And within like 30 seconds, it backs out. Yep. And finds a new way and gets us to the front of the Biltmore Convention Center.
Wow.
That's what we're talking about here. So I love your analogies, Harpaul. I think we're living it, right? We're living it, and it's really cool. Which areas of healthcare operations are companies making the biggest impact with agentic AI automation today? And what are some of the outcomes you've seen?
I've seen several so far, which have been fascinating. And my background is a lot in healthcare operations, financial operations, revenue cycle in particular. So amazing number of use cases there. I like to think about the places that we look for this, where you think about a lot of steps that have to be taken. So it may be a long workflow that's using all kinds of different information. Some of it might be image, like a fax or a PDF. Some of it might be data that is discretely deposited in a system in a field somewhere. And when you think about workers that have to pull things from lots of different locations and assemble them and try and move them forward, that becomes a really ideal use case for an agentic AI workflow, because there's all of those multiple disparate components that have to be processed. And when they're somewhat mundane and repetitive, and also when they're high volume, you see that. So if you look at some of the things that we've seen already and that many in the audience may have seen, complex processes around prior authorization as an example, whether you're on the payer side or the provider side, very difficult, very challenging, time sensitive. That's the other thing, that you've got to get these things resolved quickly. There are a lot of dependencies. And so we're seeing, when you automate that prior authorization process, tremendous improvement in cycle time, accuracy, because of the way the data is processed far more efficiently and effectively. You end up with patient satisfaction. You end up with physician satisfaction. So a lot of really positive outcomes from really treating that whole process that has been drudgery with an agentic solution. You can look at things in the back office. Very often administrative functions are very well suited for an agentic AI type of solution. Even claim submission. And we've seen so many workflow tools that have tried to help with that and everything. But when you start to process with agentic AI, you have the opportunity to grab so many errors that are introduced because of variation, because of variables. Payer contracts are so different, a different modifier required, a different health condition buried deep in a health record that isn't being picked up by the biller. Those kinds of things can be uncovered in an agentic solution workflow and really provide tremendous value and outcomes.
I appreciate that, Doug. Harpaul, were you going to comment as well?
Yeah, I think some of the results that we've seen, to Doug's point, very much on the back office side versus more on the patient-facing side. Sure. I still think that there's still work to be done. Yes, scribing is doing well, but it sometimes struggles on the specialty, so to speak. We had one of our health plan payers that are using our products, to Doug's point on prior authorization, they 2x'd or doubled their prior authorization for the year. So the knee-jerk reaction for any executive is to say, okay, I need to now double my team because I'm doubling my volume. And instead of going from 30 to 60 nurses and PAs that were evaluating this prior authorization, they deployed within 3 weeks. They went, instead of going to 30 to 60, they actually went from 30 to 16 people full time, reallocating the 14 people to more of the gray areas of prior authorizations. And the end result for them was not only saving $2 million, but they were able to drive the decisioning time from 7 days, which is SLA, down to 2.5 days. Coming back to the member's experience, not only are they getting internal efficiency, not only are their employees are removing themselves from the drudgery and doing the special cases that really need the attention. But the end member, the patient, is actually getting a better satisfaction of being able to say, okay, I'm 2.5 times faster to book my surgery now, or I need my GLPs and I'm now getting my results a lot more quicker than taking time that sometimes ends up happening in the middle between payers and the providers.
Totally. Yeah, no, great use cases. Thank you, Doug and Harpaul. Those are the phenomenal examples. And let's face it, right? We're dealing with trying times in healthcare right now. The one big beautiful bill is not helping anybody. The need for efficiency has never been greater. And there's tools out there now, like your platform, to be able to optimize and do better with less. There's a lot of vendors claiming that they offer agentic AI. You walk across the hall here and all over the internet, AI automation, agentic AI. How can healthcare executives tell what's truly agentic versus just smoke and mirrors or AI bottled into legacy tech?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of doing dozens of speaking events and speaking to thousands of healthcare executives this year. And what I tell them, Saul, is to look at 6 pillars of evaluation when you're thinking about an agentic provider or an AI vendor, to be honest. First, I would say is reasoning, right? Do they show reasoning where they have similar knowledge to the workflow or the process that you're ultimately automating itself? Second, I would say is adaptability. They're non-deterministic. So as a result, similar to humans, we're going to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, these agents itself. So can you show failures? And can you show that they learn from the failure and then resolve itself and they have that self-learning mechanism built in? If they have that, then that's the growth mindset quote that we always aspire for employees to do. So can they actually show adaptability and show actual runs like that? Number 3, I think interoperability is exceptionally important. It's great that we're building, let's say, a voice agent that can do some things in call center, but if it doesn't have the interoperability into the ERPs or being able to connect into the other systems like billing, how are you going to answer the hundreds of different variation questions versus just saying, hold on, let me get you a human? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why humans bypass the call center immediately because it just doesn't have the answer. And they then allow the human who's picking up that phone to then go through 5 sites to bring that in. And I think vendors need to really prioritize interoperability given how custom each health system or health plan or payer is ultimately. The 4th is agility. I think while we can wait for some vendors to do several months, 5-6 months to build something, our processes change. The big, beautiful bill came up, government legislation can change. So we need to be dynamic with kind of like what's being brought to us on a day-to-day basis. And then I would say like performance and scalability is also ultimately very key. So multiple agent frameworks, what that really means is you go into a department, you have specialists. So why is one agent basically going to do 5-6 things when you have 5-6 people doing different things and passing the baton itself? And then last but not least, I think it's like fault tolerancy. You need to have audit trails. Again, these are non-deterministic systems. When they go wrong, can they put up their hand and say, hey, human, can you help me? And also, can you look at backlogs and auditability and give it feedback on a continual basis? So that's kind of like the framework that we've been providing organizations that really resonate well to then look beyond the smoke and mirrors that are out there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of frameworks, and it just provides a good lens through which we can understand these new technologies. Doug, what are your perspectives on that question?
Well, I think it's really important to look at, as Harpaul said, the underlying structure that a company is offering. But one of the other considerations that we try and help our customers with and try and promote is to really understand the impacts of change management in this regard. So the implementation process, there's standard tech implementation that we're all familiar with. But this is a time now where we're going to be rethinking our business organizations as well as our business processes. When Harpaul was talking about the prior auth example and the redeployment of staff to different roles, and different elevated roles in many cases from what they were doing, that opportunity to grow your organization and to restructure and rethink it is an exceptionally important part of the process. And it has to be done carefully and with planning, but the execution of it can be amazingly successful for your employees, for satisfaction, and again, to help with the productivity overall. When I think about the impact to people from AI, and there's a lot out there in the media talking about what's happening to jobs and everything else. We look at this, certainly in healthcare, seeing that there's still a gap. We're still short people. And so this isn't really about massive removal of jobs. It's actually about how to elevate the jobs that we have, how to rethink those jobs, and how to use our teams and help them develop and grow in the best way that they can for their careers. That is all part of that change management process.
Thanks for highlighting that, Doug. The people aspect of this, the change management part of this, is just as crucial as the tech and making sure it integrates and it's interoperable. Definitely something for all of us to think about. That org structure, the future org structure, and what it means.
Exactly.
Well, guys, just an incredible opportunity to speak to both of you. If you wanted to leave our listeners with any thoughts, I'd love to give both of you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think organizations have a struggle of where to start. So I often say, look, you should look at the underserved areas in your organizations. If you're going into back office and you're writing off 20, 30, 40%, which is what financial, like healthcare institutions are doing. I don't understand why still, but that's a great area to just like uncover those rocks and then being able to say, okay, well, why are we doing this? Okay, we're not, as an example, we're not servicing underpays as an example. So let's go attack and use agents to go through those backlogs and actually fight the fight in the event that you're being downcoded or whatever it might be. So I think it's really about taking a holistic view, and then, or conversely, if you can't hire in an area like Doug mentioned, there's a significant gap. Allow agents to get into that world as well and rethink the hiring of a job, posting a job posting and saying, can an agent be able to do 60 to 70% of that?
That's great.
Yeah. I think, Saul, one of the things I think about from an advice perspective more than anything else is to think about what you had said earlier. Look where we were a year ago, where we are now. Things are moving quickly. And healthcare typically has been a little bit of a laggard when it comes to innovative adoption, right? The time is now. And that's what I would say to folks. Take some action, do some planning, understand your organization and its opportunities, understand your problems, but do something now. Don't wait, because the opportunity is here and it's fresh and things will keep moving quickly, both in positive and negative directions, depending. And you don't want to be stuck just watching.
Wow. I'll say an amen to that one, because that is nothing but truth right there, folks. The time is now. And when you have people and organizations and platforms like the ones that Doug and Harpaul represent with Magical, you don't have to do it alone. There's expertise. And so the best place to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, it'd be getmagical.com.
Get magical, folks. Now's the time. In the show notes, you'll see the ways to get in touch with the company as well as Doug and Harpaul. Thank you all for tuning in on this Beat podcast. And I want to give both of you a big thanks for joining us.
Pleasure's ours.
Thank you. Pleasure.